Let's get started in the thick of this. So both of you actually, enjoyed a journey so far right now with the property that you've purchased with us a couple of years ago. And I wanted to obviously ask you, from the very beginning, start with the introduction first about yourself, where you live, what you do for work, and then pretty much what inspired you towards property. That would actually help the audience as well.
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a bit about ourselves. Himanshu moved to Australia in 2013. I moved to Australia in 2015. We met here in Deakin. We both moved as students. We got married here first, and that's basically the start of our journey together as a couple. We both work in IT background. Although he has not studied anything related to IT, he is a mechanical engineer, but Australia brings surprises to you. So here we are, both in IT, working in Deakin at this stage, and really enjoying that. Do you want to add anything to the introduction?
No. I mean, it's been a wonderful journey. Of course, it's been 12 years, 13 years almost coming here. Honestly, coming to the property part of this, we have been living in Southeast Melbourne for quite some time, since I think 2015.
Since 2015, so about 10 years now.
10 years. Yeah. We do like Southeast, and honestly speaking, like is now something that we know, but when we moved, we didn't know what Southeast of Melbourne is like. But obviously it was closer to work, and we sort of settled into Clayton for close to 7-8 years. And that's when we lived in Clayton, rented an apartment, we liked it. Eventually in 2018 we decided to buy an apartment as our first home. Two things, and I'm sure people obviously have lots of opinions on buying an apartment, and in hindsight we do too, and question that decision. But the thing at that point of time was that apartment was something we could afford. It was brand new apartment. We lived there for close to 4 years, so we enjoyed every bit of living into that apartment. We welcomed our family there. First house, full stop. Doesn't matter. We don't own our own house in India. So this was for both of us, this was our first property. Being in Australia, it made it even more special. And we absolutely enjoyed that. 4 years later, around during COVID is when we slowly started thinking of getting something bigger. And that's when we decided to move further down southeast, and we built a house in Officer, which is where we are now residing. It's a lovely double-story house. We obviously have a new family member, our son, who was born just a couple of months back.
Congratulations.
And thank you. That was the whole plan. Anyways, we have been living here for the last 3 years now, 3.5 years, and now enjoy the quietness of Officer, which I can't believe. I'm originally from Mumbai, and you get used to certain things in life very quickly. I have definitely gotten used to the quiet of Officer, because Clayton was busy, but we love it here. This is now our sort of family home, at least for the foreseeable future. We'll see how what future holds, and we always sort of, my dad he's an investment consultant, so back in India. So anything related to stocks, mutual funds, he's the guy to go to. I grew up around him, his business. So saving money was obviously part of growing up, right? And saving money in a smarter way, rather than putting it in your bank account, was something we knew. And obviously Bhavya comes from she studied Masters of Finance, and she has that in the back of her mind. So we constantly thought of how to maximize and grow our money, and that's when we started this journey. So we can talk about that, obviously, but yeah, that was the beginning of our journey.
We sort of got into property investment.
Yes.
I think the benefits that we saw were from when we moved into this house in Officer, and the Clayton apartment became an investment property. That's where we started seeing the benefits of actually having an investment property alongside your primary residence. And that sort of triggered us to, think more along those lines, rather than just sitting here and thinking of investing in other sources, pretty much.
And you know what, Himanshu really touched on certain elements of the childhood aspect of it, and seeing parents do certain things and how they save, and what sort of profile our parents hold during when we are growing up. It forms a big part of our decisions and risk-taking appetite, right? And I see this journey with so many people who don't have that type of elements in their childhood. That they don't know the saving patterns, they've not seen savings, they don't know what investment really looks like, and they're very risk adverse with all of those aspects. So Do you believe that you're shaping up to all of this portfolio that you should be investing into property and so forth, whilst you do shares and other things? Was
Yeah.
part of that whole sort of background that you've carried?
100%
Absolutely, yeah.
for both of us. And as we said, we both come from middle class families back in India. Our parents, they worked hard throughout their life, and my dad, obviously, he always wanted to do his own business, and he started his insurance agent back in the 90s when I was born. And he left, and obviously everyone in the family was very upset. Everyone, like my grandfather, his brothers, all my dad's cousin, they all worked in the Indian Railway. So him taking that decision was a big sort of self-confidence that he had, and he knew what he was doing. And 35 years later, over 2,000 clients, which he still manages, staff. Me growing up around all of that, I didn't see my dad going to an office, or at least I don't remember him. I always saw him going to and managing his business rather than him leaving at 9 and coming home at 5. That never happened.
Yep.
Which and there were sacrifices, a lot of them. Me and my mom and my grandfather lived in a separate city for about 7 years while dad was building his business in Mumbai. So we knew what the compromises were, but at the same time, it sort of opened my outlook towards how money works. And I can't believe, when I was around 17, 18, which is when I first read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I really thought that there were more dad jokes in it, but no, it's a great book. If people haven't heard of it, they should definitely look it up. People who have read about Rich Dad Poor Dad, they know what I'm talking about. And it's a very basic concept and talks about how your money can make you money. So yeah, no, 100%. We both have been, of that mindset since we are together. And Bhavya, all the credit in terms of taking that risk, because I am, as much as my dad is he's quite bold, I am not, and that just potentially is how I am. And also my mom's chain. Mom was a bit hesitant, but Bhavya is like my dad in lot of ways, and she's like, we'll take that chance, let's see what happens. And I do appreciate that, because you need that combination of one holding a little bit back, being a little bit more sensible, while the other one sort of is going out there thinking of all the ideas. And that was the whole point of when she first said, oh, let's buy an apartment, I was like, no, are you crazy? It makes no sense. And here we are having our own house now, and an investment property, of course, thanks to you. So I think I have no regrets.
Awesome. Love it. So tell me a little bit about this journey of your investment. So you thought about it, obviously, a couple of years ago, that you want to get into it. You've been in Australia for a while already, right?
Yeah.
So you obviously understand the markets around you. What prompted you to go to a buyer agent and not do it yourself?
Well, so we had an apartment in Victoria, which we ended up
Correct.
selling after we moved to Officer, like after a year and a half of moving here. Our house, which we are living in, that's in Victoria as well. And I have been very active in Facebook groups of property related groups, investment related groups. There are groups where there's knowledge about doing such and such courses yourself and gaining your knowledge, and just going for investment properties yourself, because those courses will give you the knowledge, so you save on the money of appointing a professional to help you do that. And after sort of going through all of those groups, all of that knowledge, well, it definitely didn't fit us in terms of we can just do the work ourselves, because Melbourne didn't tick all the boxes to get an investment property. I say Melbourne, I basically mean Victoria. It could be regional Victoria. We had looked into certain regional areas towards Lakes Entrance, I think, on the way. I've forgotten the name now.
Yeah.
And that is when we were looking for it ourselves, but didn't work out for us. And so we also spoke to a broker and asked for her suggestions and recommendations. And that's when your name came up. And I am sort of that person. I just don't go with the flow in terms of, someone has said this, let's just go and do that. Once I have a suggestion, I would like to do my own research. I would like to look up all the pros and the cons and the reviews and everything, and then talk to him first, and then take a decision. This is what we want to do. And that is when it struck up that, I would say world, but not world. Australia is your oyster. So you don't have to be limited to Victoria itself. There is like millions of opportunities outside Victoria, but you can't do that all by yourself, and you have to work with a professional. And I think when we were getting our apartment, our broker, not the broker, but the loan person from the ANZ bank herself, at that point she had talked about getting a buyer's agent involved, but it didn't make sense then. Obviously, it was sort of a marketing gimmick at that point, but that sort of had a recap in my mind that, okay, that's what she talked about, and this is where we are at now.
Yeah.
So it made sense to go to a buyer's agent. And broker Kiran Sood, yes, we have been working with her since we got this house in Officer, so which is like 2020, so 5 years. And if it was coming from her, it was like, okay, well, she wouldn't make just a blank recommendation, so it would be a strong recommendation. And that's where we sort of started through it, that yes, okay, we've heard good reviews about you. We've heard, I've been in the property group, I've seen people recommending FMRE and your name specifically. And yeah, so it just sort of made sense to go ahead and book an appointment with you. And I think the first person we spoke to was Uru, yes. And that sort of changed something. Like he was a very calm and very sort of understanding sort of a person.
Yeah.
I think we spent about 30-45 minutes on the first call with him.
True. Yeah.
And the way he sort of understood what we were looking for and what would work best for us and where we were coming from, that made a difference. And then that physical, the in-person appointment with you in Point Cook, doing those mapping on the whiteboard.
Yeah.
And one thing that struck out to me after that session, his goal was, alongside the properties, he obviously, being a car person, he wanted to have a Ferrari. Now, if you would go to any ABCXYZ person, like, oh yeah, you are dumb, you can just save your money and get your own car. But you including that in that journey of where we should, of our goal, that okay, in the end, this is what we are looking at, plus your car, which doesn't go unnoticed. That's sort of, okay, that means that yes, you are talking in reality terms, not just, okay, this is what the process is on paper, check, and this is what that's done. So that personal touch, that definitely made the difference for me.
Yeah.
But
and that's that strategy session is very tailored to a very individual circumstances with understanding, your finances and risk appetite. Although we have a disclaimer, we are not financial planners, accountants, or brokers, but having a good understanding about you and then what your vision is towards your own goals helps us sort of craft a method that allows us to say, okay, which type of property should we now consider first, then go to second, third, fourth, if you're really building the portfolio. So that's the intent of that. But it's good to see that, one, as far as I understand, not many people do this in the market at the depth and the level of stuff that we carry. And as you said, it's not a transaction just on a piece of paper that we, make you millions of dollars over a period of time with an extrapolated maps and, charts. We are being very realistic about, what you want and then why you want that, and then sort of, string them together at the right time so that if at all what we achieve and those milestones are achieved, then of course, we are on our way to get to that goals. So I'm very happy that you enjoyed that session. So that takeaway from that session.
Now, I was going to say, I think the difference is also that if you sort of look up yourself, now, for example, we have friends who, if they are looking for an investment property after they've built a house, if you're working with yourself only, you'll probably have a range, a parameter where you would be looking for an investment property, which may or may not make sense. But for example, if we were going to look for ourselves, even if it would have been Queensland, I'm sure we wouldn't have looked at a house which was built in 1940s, irrespective of the land size. We would have like, no, well, this is a very old house. We are not looking at it cross. But then obviously when things come on paper that, okay, this is the reality on ground of why it is a good selection and how it will work for you. And we are seeing the benefit to that right now as well. But at the starting of when we were into that journey, I mean, yes, there is something different about an advice coming from a professional like you versus us ourselves doing our research and having that sort of mindset that, no, we live in a beautiful house, so we don't want to be looking at a property which is like coming to 80 years old now.
Almost. To me, honestly speaking, and this is extremely, this is how we grow up, right? We always have, as kids, again, when back in India, and this is, for me, it was different because of what I said previously, because of my dad's profession. But generally speaking, even today, if you go and talk to someone who is not into investment and say, I want to invest money, the first thing they'll say, buy gold. And they mean physical gold. Or maybe, put your money in a bank account. This is back in India. So in here as well, when you say, oh, I'm looking at buying an investment property, talk to your friends here, more likely this concept that you buying a property which you potentially are not physically able to go and check, potentially you would never go and check that property during the lifetime of, for how many years you own that property. And taking that emotional quotient out of that, it's very it's challenging at first, because to be honest with you, when even now, if I tell this to our in-laws that we bought a property in Queensland, we have never been there, it sounds absolutely ridiculous. In India, you can't do something like that, where you have invested so much money into something which you haven't even seen. You know what I mean? But because of how we obviously, and then talking to you, looking at the whole thing in a way where obviously this is purely a transaction, right? And I'm sorry to say that I'm very harsh when I say something like this, but taking that emotional and as Bhavya said, right, we think, oh, we are living in this modern house which is 2 years old. Why would someone rent a house which is 50 years old, for example? And you think of it that way. But that's not how world works. And this is where professionals and experts like you, who guide us and who have seen more of that than we ever could, that helps a lot. And which is what happened with us, to be honest.
Well, your property is not only just close to 80 years old, you also went ahead with the recommendation of buying a 2-bedroom property to fit your budget.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the 2-bedroom property, which is not a very normal way of people looking at it?
No.
They don't want to go negotiate below 4-bedroom. Most people want 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom property. How did you own now 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom as investment? So what were your initial thoughts around that? And how did you overcome that to go ahead and buy that?
Yeah, and that goes back to what I just talked about, right? When we both talked about it, and we are like, if say, you as humans, you like to put yourself into the shoes of someone who is going to rent. And we have come from that background, right? We have rented houses, we have rented an apartment. You think, would you live in this house? And the question is, oh, it's only 2 bedrooms, so it obviously means it cannot be a big family. Will that mean we won't have any tenants? And we obviously discussed all of that. And when we saw, and this is where I remember the real estate agent showed us a live video, but they also sent us a video of the house. Oh, that was Puru. Yeah, the Puru sent us that video of the whole house, and we looked at it and we were like, it's a very decent property, what it is. And when we saw the massive empty land, we were like, you know what, it's a great house, and obviously people are living in it right now. So let's not try and put ourselves into that shoe, and trust what Puru and yourself and the whole team have. You guys were so confident in recommending something like that. So yeah, I don't know, but I'm sure, I don't remember.
Definitely. And I think obviously being in Australia, we've learned one thing, that yes, size of the house matters, but then there are all sorts of people who live in all different sizes and types of houses. But then all it comes down to is also the size of the land, because house is ultimately bricks and mortar. That is not going to appreciate, that is going to depreciate in value. But then if you have a good enough size of the land, which is what it was in Queensland, that was the one positive thing that we saw in there. And obviously then it wasn't the first property that was shown by your team to us, and then we said, okay, yes, go ahead with it. Obviously there were a few hiccups in there that we saw, 2 or 3 of them. So few hiccups were around, I think, the range that we were looking at, but something happened around there. The loan serviceability wasn't as much, but as they say, whatever happens for the good reason. So we did overcome that 2-bedroom thing. Like, okay, if it's currently tenanted, and yes, we got to know that, okay, they're an old couple, retired couple, and it made sense that, okay, you as an old couple, you probably don't want to be living in a 4-bedroom house, because you don't want to be maintaining such a big house, or you don't want to be doing up and down in a double-story house. So if there is demand, which is where the professional advice is coming from for your team, so we'll just go with it. We have to trust it.
Yeah, which is what we did. It was, honestly speaking, it was the trust, because and to be honest, all these questions we did ask. Right, we talked to Puru, we would have talked to you and the team, as to how all of this works, being the first time doing something like that.
And I remember Puru also sending us a list of all the projects that were lined up for that area, and why he thinks that area would work best, and why that, like, taking out the factor of the size of the property, but looking more into the broader picture of the area and the projects, and why that market is gonna perform in the future, was sort of that should have taken priority over the size of the house.
size of the house, the how old the house is, etc., etc. Because and this is, I constantly go back to this, and I always say it's just try for 5 minutes, take the emotions out of it and think of it in every other aspect that you can, and that's extremely hard, but that is where the trust sort of is like, what, trust, and that is what we did.
That's really good, and I'm hearing the themes of relying on professionals, trusting the information provided, giving you the comfort and confidence around what you're doing, what you're buying, and it making a logical sense of what we are trying to achieve and why we are buying that type of property. Not that we want to go down 2 bedroom if we don't have a budget constraint, but if it is what it is, then the market will dictate what we can do. As long as it's a growth market, ultimately, tenancy matters, and then of course, want to make sure you have the tenant there who will live there and will stay there for longer, right? So that's all part of due diligence, which is great to see that. I think big part of this is education, right? And really us helping you possibly in breaking those shackles around the conventional thinking and conventional notions we carry of what an investment should look like, right? And I really want to congratulate you for saying yes to this 2 bedroom, because not many do it, actually, to be very honest. Many of them are very, very strong about the fact that no, it has to be 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom at least, or but you've gone with 2-1.